Good afternoon, everyone. This is Seth Chandler, and welcome to this episode of PCGS's Slab Lab. We're really honored here to have our guest, Don Ketterling, who we've been trying to get after here for like 6 or 7 months. Finally, our schedules have fallen into place, so I'm really excited to kind of get to know you. As you said, we've walked by each other, said hello a few times, but this is actually kind of our first sit down where we can get to know each other. So welcome to Slab Lab.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. This is my first Long Beach in 2.5 years, so I missed all that COVID period. So this is kind of my origin here, this place.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I go back to, I grew up in Orange County, and I worked in a coin shop in 1963, 4, and 5.
Wow.
I was a teenager, and the proprietor, his name was Harold, he decided to attend the first Long Beach show in 1964, which was at the Civic Auditorium, which doesn't exist anymore. But I was able to go to the first 2 Long Beach shows with him.
So you've been coming to Long Beach shows that entire time?
No, the 64, 65, then there was a market, one of our downturn market periods. 65 was the end of the BU roll and proof set era.
Sure, yeah. I remember
and there
that,
was a lot of speculation going on there and all that. One of the things that we were proud of in the coin shop that I worked in was we had one of the first teletypes, which morphed into what is now the gray sheet, CDN, and CCE and all that stuff. But it was Bert Blumert, who used to live in the Bay Area, went out and in his entrepreneurial skills, went out and bought a whole bunch of Associated Press teletypes that were being disposed of by the newspaper networks, and turned it into a coin dealer exchange.
Wow.
And that started. Then the gray sheet came along to print the results of what was going on weekly in that gray sheet. And this is so I've been around for all that period.
So why don't you tell a little bit about yourself? You said you're originally from Orange County, but like how you grew up and what got you started in the coins. We'd like to know that.
Well, I started collecting in the 1950s in grade school, and everybody back then seemed to collect. All my friends collected. I wasn't in scouting, but most of my friends were. And there's a scouting merit badge, that sort of thing. And so there was a competition. We had competition to see if you could fill up your album. I started collecting Buffalo nickels. And what I did was I would go to school back then. There was a lady that sold milk to the students, the little cartons. It was a nickel for a carton of milk. Wow. So I would go, and she collected the money in a muffin pan. And every day I would come there with my Jeffersons, and I would swap her out for all the buffaloes that were in the thing. And I actually filled an entire album of circulated, but a complete album. Wow. The only thing I missed was the overdate and the 3-legger.
Well, that's pretty cool.
But I pulled everything else out of circulation.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It could still happen up until the 50s, huh?
Yeah. I mean, even into the early 60s, you could still find stuff. But you know what happened? I mean, the silver was taken out of our coinage in '64, so all of a sudden the coins weren't exciting anymore. All the good stuff was pulled out by then.
Yeah, that's true.
But and then then I was hanging around the coin shop so much. We had 3 coin shops in town then, and I was hanging around the coin shop so much. The guy said, "Well, you want to work here?"
Yeah. And how old are you at the time?
I would have paid him. I was 13.
13. He's like, "You want a job, kid?"
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he paid me a couple of bucks a week or something, and all I could eat at the Tasty Freeze across the street. Yeah. But I would have paid him to work there.
What was it like? What did you start doing right away? What did he have
you
do?
This place was so active. We had they had a bid board. It closed every Friday, and the place was packed.
Yeah. Why don't you explain what a bid board is? That's old school.
Really old school. Some of the shops that had them, you would take your coin that you want to sell, and they would staple it to a little card and then put that up on a board. And then there was little columns there that you could walk in with your pencil or pen and bid on these things. Then the auction would close at a certain time. So you'd have these people standing around, watching trying to pretend that they're not interested in that coin, and this guy would put a bid up there, and then he'd turn his back, and the other guy would come up and put another bid up there and try to beat him out, and then they ding the bell and it's all done. We had in Fullerton there was Hughes Aircraft, and they had a huge coin club, and these guys with the
a company had its own coin club.
Hughes Aircraft, just like in Seattle, Boeing had a big coin club, and but Hughes Aircraft, these guys with the classic pocket protectors, the engineers,
real nerds,
and they would come in there and they're all bidding on coins. I mean, it was so active, you couldn't move in the shop. I mean, the world has changed a lot, since then. But you couldn't. I mean, it was pretty crazy. Wow. And one of the guys that ran the local coin club there was named Herb Bergen. He became the president of the ANA in I think the late '60s. He's gone now. But one of the things I remember him. I was saving up my money to buy B rolls of 55s pennies, and he said, son, you ought to take that $25 and buy a nice proof Barber dime or something, And I wish I'd listened to him.
Yeah, right. Now you're stuck with a bunch of 55s. So it's worth about the same. Yeah,
they're actually worth less.
Really
they were worth more back then.
That's amazing.
In dollars, not in inflation. No, that doesn't even count.
So what did you learn at the shop? What were the big at 13, 14, 15? What were you learning?
It was they obviously handled everything. We had to. My job was the market was really robust, and the only price guide we had was Coin World, and we would wait with bated breath for the next weekly issue of Coin World to hit because they had the Coin World trends, and we would use those trends to price our coins. Right. And my job was to reprice everything in the showcases.
Funny,
that market was going straight up.
Really, all the time. Coins were selling. Have you seen anything like it since?
Sure. We've had the booms. Yeah. It's just the vehicle is different. Back then it was these B rolls and proof sets. There was a book published by George W. Halings called The Profit March of a Rare Coin Investment, and it projected. Back then, it was printed in '63, so they projected 1967 and 1971. And he had these outrageous imagining prices that in 1971. And so that also helped kick the market up. So everybody's running around buying these BU rolls, and then the proof set boom. I mean, I remember selling. This is 1964. We sold 60 small date proof sets for $60. And what are they worth now? 20?
Yeah, $20. Yeah. You can't get rid of them at
$20. And $20 in today's dollars, let alone back then. Think about what they were worth then. Wow. So, but all those things, and that was really a boom and a bubble that crashed. And then at the end of '65, he closed the shop, and I was out of a job. So I was in high school.
So it was that dramatic. Things were so hot, and then all of a sudden, just kind of done. It stopped. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then how old were you in '65 then?
I would have been pushing 16.
Okay. Still in high school?
Yeah, high school, girls, cars, all that stuff.
1960s all the way, huh?
Yeah.
What was your favorite singer, band at the time? Do you remember?
I'd have to think long and hard. There was so many. I mean, the classic ones, the Byrds. Dylan was popular from 63 on, and
So were you bummed? You had your dream job, you're working, all of a sudden you can't work there anymore?
Yeah, well,
what was the next
the
step?
other part of it was my grades were so bad because I couldn't wait to get out of school when the shop was open. I couldn't wait to get out of school and run down to the coin shop. That's all I wanted to do. I'd sit in class and be thinking about the coin shop.
Yeah,
I just lived and breathed coins. So
what was your next step?
Well, there was a break. Went through high school, started college as a business major, but I was really out of coins because the market had really gone south.
It was bad
things
time,
were, and I kind of lost interest in coins at that point. And then college, then the draft, and went in the Navy, and did a tour in Vietnam and all that kind of stuff. When I got out, I decided to go back to school, and I changed my major to journalism, of all things. And when I ended up transferring up to San Jose State, that's where I started the coin business. and I started playing around with coins again, just like on weekends, going to these little coin shows that they had at the Santa Clara Fairgrounds.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Where that is.
a Bourse table cost $18.
Wow.
And I would bring a case of red books, and I could pay my table by selling that case of red books.
Really? Okay.
Pay for the $18, and then whatever else I sold, I was a happy camper.
You're in the money, yeah.
Yeah.
What type of coins did you bring to sell? And you're like, how old are you now?
mainly
Early 20s?
Yeah, I would have been, like 23, 24.
What kind of coins were you bringing?
Back then, walkers and dollars, the standard, kind of thing. A BUS Mint dollar was worth $5.
Yeah, right.
Back then, and
the negotiations are fascinating. Like, I'll give you $4.50 or $5.
oh yeah, I got in
amounts.
arguments over 25 cents or 50
really?
cents on a coin.
Yeah.
And
to explain people, like, was there varying degrees in quality back then? Was it like really exceptional versus
they had
basic?
already started, the gray sheet at that time had the columns, but they only had 2 columns. They had a MS-60 column and a 65 column. And what they sold as a 65 back then was really not a 65. I would say it was more like a 63.
Got it, okay.
And then, but the world mainly ran with that, and those of us that had sharper eyes than other people found either the clients or the dealers that would pay more for that special coin. There was always that. We didn't use the term 65 plus or 67 or anything like that. We just said this is like a super gem or something.
So it's like a basic like commodity coin, or whoa, this is a super gem. And
Right.
What was the price difference between?
It varied.
Really?
It varied. I remember selling a peace dollar for $200, common date 22 or 23. What was it, 22? For $200 when gray sheet was like $12.
Wow. So it was
because it was magnificent.
So would that grade
it probably
today?
would have graded 7+ or something today.
Wow.
And but I was always into quality. I was into quality before a lot of people were.
Sure.
And I was really lucky that when I got I moved from the Bay Area from, let's say I was there.
You were in San Jose? Is that where you lived?
I was living in Santa Clara and Cupertino. And then I moved from there to Los Angeles in '78 and started doing all the shows in LA, and that included this show.
So you're a full-time coin dealer at this point?
Yeah, in '77 I decided to do it full-time.
Okay.
I skipped a couple other things here, but I was a trained electrician in the Navy, and I also had my journalism degree, and so I was doing a couple different things using those tools. I was working at the wind tunnels at Moffett Field as an electrician.
Okay. Wow, okay.
And I had a post office box on the base, and I was running mail bid sales.
That's funny.
Running ads in the numismatist.
Right. That's cool.
And that's kind of when I decided to morph into coins full time.
Okay.
And then I moved to LA, started doing the shows down here, and '78 was the first Long Beach I did coming back.
That was a good time to jump into the coin business.
Yeah, it was
right?
actually in this room. This is part of that room.
Really?
I still remember that my table number was 128. It was dead center of the room. But yeah, I mean, that's all the evolution of these kinds of things. But I think the main thing that I was fortunate about was that I was dealing with all those people that ended up establishing the grading standards. I dealt with everybody, from David Hall to, there was Nick Buzelich. He's gone now. He worked for David. He was his buyer, and we had these dealer roundtables, and you do a coin show on a weekend, but get together in the middle of the week at somebody's house.
Oh, really?
Everybody brought their
coins.
double-rolled boxes of coins and sit around the table and
So it's
eat
the coin
and
show
drink.
before the coin show.
Yeah, and we're doing wholesale trading around with each other before the weekend.
Right. That's
Cool. And but I learned that sort of grading skill that we now use as standard.
So at the time, Annex was out issuing certificates.
Yeah, they had
but you were like, this isn't like what
nobody
it
was really
needs.
paying a lot of attention. I mean, they were out there. You would find them, but nobody. I don't remember anybody thinking that was a standard.
Right.
There was just. I always gravitated to the high end guy, and I won't name a bunch of people, but. I don't want to name drop, but I always found out who the high buyer was, who had the eye that would pay more for the exotic coin, the one that you knew was exceptional. Sure, yeah. And that's how the grading standard started, really. And that there was, again, I won't name all those people, but David Hall was among them. They were always at at these roundtables that we did. Dennis Baker, we had a partner. Dennis Baker he ran the Gray Sheet for a while. He was the editor. Now he runs Numis Media, and he had a partner. And we were always trading coins, and we learned. There was some standard. I don't know how it evolved, but that is the standard that ended up being. I call it the California standard. That ended up being what founded PCGS.
Were you kind of like an 11-point standard, or like a 7 points within the 60s, or was it,
about
how did you
that?
carve it
The
up?
late 70s, there were people already calling things 67. They were starting to use that 65 plus number, and some people thought it was hooey, and it wasn't. What do you? And you couldn't see the difference and all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So
old school, always going against old tradition.
But some people did see a difference, and I did very well by finding that exceptional coin, selling it to the right guy, either a collector or another dealer that had the collector.
So were you doing mostly wholesale business at the time, or you were doing?
No, I always set up at the shows. The big shows here. One of my favorite shows was on the Queen Mary. They did shows on the Queen Mary in the main ballroom there.
That's cool.
And it was really great. I mean, it was just imagine the ballroom in the Queen Mary was a coin show. And it was really great. And then of course the Long Beach show. Those were the two big shows. And the other one was a show done by David Griffith and his wife Barbara. It was in Glendale at the Civic Auditorium there. And there was 2 floors to that auditorium. The top floor was stamps, and the bottom floor the basement was coins.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody who was anybody was there, and it was just a lot of trading, and that was a good time that the market was starting to heat up. A couple of books came out. Wayne Miller did his book on silver dollars. Yeah. The other guy that I credit, it was Les and Sue Fox. They created a book called the Silver Dollar Fortune Telling.
I remember that book.
And it had a price projection in there. Right. They'd say this old mint is undergraded or undervalued, and it's worth $30 today. We think it'll be worth $400, down the road. And I remember I had a dog-eared copy of that. I was running around buying all the ones that they projected into, and that was self-fulfilling. That caused a lot of market movement. I remember buying 87 O's in BU for $18. And when they went to 19, I thought, this is too much.
Yeah, really, it's funny. So what, did you have a specialization, or you just kind of bought
I really did a lot with dollars. Dollars were easy, and it like it still is today.
Sure.
It's absolutely the most collected coin, it's the most popular coin probably.
What are some of the cool
world.
ones you've handled in your career?
I've handled, I honestly would tell you I've forgotten a lot of it, but I have a whole sort of a digital library that I was able to save of a lot of things that I've handled. But just I can't think of anything that I didn't handle. I've traded 93S's and 65. The Eliasberg specimen, the guy was putting together a registry set, and this I'm talking about 3 years ago or something like that, and he needed that coin, and so a coin that I probably could have bought and sold for $900 in the late 70s, I sold for $275,000. Yeah, wow. I mean, I was just telling somebody today, if I had any regrets, it was that I didn't personally collect during my career.
Some of those coins, sure. So have you always been on your own? Have you worked for other firms?
No, I've done. Let's see. So my career. So I didn't. 1978, I moved down here. And then I bought a store, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time for that 79, 80 boom.
Huge, yeah.
And I never imagined I could make so much money. But,
just like a line out of your show, was it intense? Describe that. How was it, like in person?
It was euphoric.
Really?
I had a similar situation. I was a one-man proprietor. My store was in Sherman Oaks on Ventura Boulevard in the corner of Van Nuys, around the corner from the newsstand. It was a little hole in the wall next to a jewelry store. And there was this young guy, he was like 18, 19, that was always in there. And similar to my experience going back, he was hanging around so much. I offered him a job, and he ended up being the head of Gold Line.
Oh, really? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Big firm.
Yeah.
Really big firm. Yeah. Okay. So the shop was just like the gold's going through the roof. People were just bringing everything.
People were, standing in line back then. It's a fantasy. We us old guys talk about it all the time now. Yeah. But that tail end of '79 and early '80, when all the metals went crazy. The Hunt brothers were doing their thing, and gold touched 870 or something an ounce, and silver was trying to get to 50. Yeah. I think it closed at 48 twice. But I remember people they were either selling or they were buying, but you had lines. And some of the bigger stores had to have security because people were trading with each other in line while they're standing in line.
That's crazy.
And some of the big outfits.
I heard a lot of great coins went to the melter.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There's things now, especially the later date stuff now that is worth a lot of money in high grade. Yeah. That a 67 red, 54p penny, would bring 4 to 5 figures today. Yeah. And it was nothing back then. Right. So, but that's just the penny. But it's like a lot of stuff was melted. The silver
like a Franklin half, like a BU roll of 49s halves. The silver value probably far exceeded any numismatic.
Yeah, there was a point at which everything was going in the melt pot. Wow. Proof sets, silver proof sets were worth. All that stuff exceeded the numismatic value. Right. So yeah, it was a time. I remember one day closing my store, and Mark was his name. We were exhausted. We hadn't sat down all day, and just sat down, collapsed, and just started laughing. It was like giddy. Right. Exactly. It was just we couldn't believe it. But those were the days. But that was another boom, and that was driven by the Carter thing and the inflation and the gas shortage and all that. We had 19% prime rate. People forget what that was like back then. Yeah. And so that triggered all the upward trend in the metals. And so that boom, the coin market, the bullion market stopped in January, February, but the coin market continued up until April. And if you talk to any of the old timers like myself, the Central State Show was held in Lincoln, Nebraska that year in 1980. And the market was going full bore until that show, and it stopped on a dime.
That's amazing that the coin market stopped at a show.